Hello, welcome to Bennett's Bike Social and the latest episode of Talking Heads. You join me, Michael Mann, in the studio with my co-host and boss, Steve Rose. Hi, Steve.
Afternoon.
And Ducati's Fabrizio Cazzoli. Hello, Fabrizio. How are you?
I'm very fine. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me as a guest.
You're more than welcome. Before we kick off, I just want to say a big thanks to Bennett's for allowing us to make such content as this. We get paid by Bennett's, and so we don't have to rely on sponsors or any other outside influencers. That's about right, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah. It's by far the best way to do it. We prefer it that way.
Good. Let's get stuck in. Fabrizio, welcome once more. Thanks for coming along. Head of Ducati. I was going to say UK, but that's not quite right, is it?
Includes also Ireland, Sweden, and Norway.
Okay, so a bit of Scandinavia too.
Yes, depends on the way you look. It could be called Ducati North Europe or Ducati UK.
Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about that role then, and sort of its breadth and your the length of time you've been with Ducati UK, because it's, what are we, 5-6 years, something like this?
With Ducati UK, yes, is getting to 5. With Ducati, much longer. So yeah, I'm a mechanical engineer. So I was made in Bologna, like the Ducatis. I grew up there. I studied there. I worked in Ducati since 1997, with a little break in between. I grew up in the factory, and then I moved to logistics, and then eventually I was dispatched to Japan, where I stayed for 11 years, and then I moved to China for Ducati, with very nice experience over there, and then here to the UK.
What was the role? Was it a similar role in the Far East?
I've always been country manager, yes, both in Japan and China, yes.
I just want to ask about the language then. How was the Italian work in China and Japan? Did you have to learn the lingo?
I did try, without success, but just basic conversation in Japanese, in Chinese is more complicated, and I stayed a little bit shorter, and the brain was a little bit more foggy, so it took. I wasn't that good on that. But if there is a good thing there, many good things over there, is that foreigners like me are always very, very welcome, and happen to me and all the other people like me.
Tell us more about tell me more about, because I'm interested, about the culture of Ducati then within Japan and China. Is it similar to what we expect over here in terms of its sort of, its premiumness?
I think the positioning of Ducati in Asia is more of a level at luxury rather than premium. So there is a very strong association with top car brands, for example, also over here, but there is at a higher level. So owning a Ducati in those countries is clearly a distinction, makes you a very, very different kind of rider. Is very strong. There is a lot of rewarding. They are incredibly proud of being part of your family. I in many ways more, how can I say, in an objective way, but also look at indicators, KPIs, and so on. The level of satisfaction of our clients in Asia is incredibly high, very, very high at every level.
So it's clearly a very important market for the company.
It's always been Japan. Japan is an historical market. Japan, of course, is the house of the big four Japanese manufacturer. So it's very important to have a place over there. Connoisseurs, they are very, very knowledgeable about the bikes they want, how they work, and so on and so forth. China is a new market. China has been booming by the time we were there. The growth was really difficult to keep under control, because we were opening dealers at the ratio of something like 5-6 every year, with of course sales coming at the same ratio. Was a very nice experience, nice place to be, right place at the right time.
How does that then translate to? So you moved. Was it your decision to move to the UK or to Europe, back to Europe?
Eventually, is a company decision. There was a change in the management, so a rotation, let's say. So I was having conversation about coming and taking that position, and so it happened. I've been in Asia for a very, very long time, so it's been 17 years I've been in Asia. So I thought it was maybe time to come back a little bit. I thought they forgot the keys, and so eventually I came back.
Yeah, is the Japanese market, is it focused on one particular sector? Are they very sports bike focused, or are they monster customers?
Sports bike are quite important there, but I would say that both Japan, China, but also UK, we have quite a good spread of products. We don't have one specific model that is massively leading and the others are small quantities. So yeah, the market is quite even, let's say. So yeah, no, there was nothing particularly out of the standard. Yeah.
I could get lost down this rabbit hole and talk about the Chinese and Japanese markets for the next hour, but
maybe next time.
Yeah, we'll do a follow-up. Fabrizio, tell us more about you. I'd like to know a bit more about yourself. When did you learn to ride? What did you learn to ride on? What do you ride now?
As I said, I was born in Bologna, but I was living out of any public transportation area and up the hills. I don't know if you've ever been to the city, to the town, but so there were two options. Option number one was my parents to take me anywhere. Option number two wheels. Started with bicycles. It was not that easy because to go back home was always uphill. So in Italy, at 14, at the time, you could get a scooter 50cc with no license, nothing. So when I was 14 years old in 1 hour, my parents, reluctantly, got me a scooter. It was a Malaguti, I think. Yes, it was a local manufacturer. And then at 16, you can move to 125, but with a license. I got the license. My first bike was Aprilia Touareg. Very nice. I loved it. 2-stroke. And I did something like 44,000 kilometers with it. It was incredible. And then I kept on moving to other motorcycles. So since then, I've been on two wheels. I always had a little bit of I think all of us, we have a little bit of a passion about engines. So anything that could move with an engine, including aircrafts, I was quite happy to be connected to. And I was lucky enough, my parents sent me to a flying school. So my high school was in a flying school, so I got the flying license as well, which I don't have right now because I didn't keep it. I didn't.
So that would be inconvenient, wouldn't it? I was going to ask if you still had it. So, but what do you ride now? I presume you can pick from anything that's in the press fleet at your Silverstone headquarters.
When my PR and marketing team allows me, yes, I can. My latest ride was the latest Multistrada V4 S. But yes, I'm lucky enough to choose a little bit what's available, and I like really to test myself the motorcycles.
Yeah. Do you have any bikes stuffed away at the back of the garage? Do you have any of your own bikes?
Not at the moment. I used to have, but again, these things of moving countries doesn't help very much when you have to have a bike to bring with you. And some countries, for example, the example of China, it's impossible to import a motorcycle that you own. And then you have, I had to sell I had a Panigale Tricolore. No, it wasn't a Panigale. It was a 1098 Tricolore at the time. And you will not believe me, when I sold it, I had a little tear. I had to turn, not to show the guy, because it's not right, is it? But it's what happened.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
The ones that got away.
Yeah.
So what's your favourite bike now in the Ducati range? Are you allowed to say?
It's difficult to say. I probably, because of my age and my way of riding, currently the Multistrada V4 is the best. Is the best for me, yes, and I think there's many reasons to be that. It's very versatile, it's powerful, but also very smooth, and so on and so forth. Yes, that's my favorite.
It's versatile, isn't it? It's got all the characteristics.
I thought it was really interesting, actually, picking up on something you said earlier about how you're born in Bologna and you've worked at Ducati for a long while. My impression of Ducati, if you think of the manufacturers that are out there, my impression of Ducati has always been that it's very much a people company. It's that all companies have a culture, but Ducati seems very focused on the people. And when the times I've been to Bologna and the couple of times I've been to the factory, you're very aware of a kind of a family feel. Is that how it is as an employee? It's certainly how it feels as an observer.
It's very good that you say that, because sometimes we don't think about it, but it is exactly like that. It's a very flat company as well, so everybody has the phone number of everyone. So when you see your phone flashing with Claudio Domenicali written on it, you skip a couple of bits, but it's normal. It's happening. I've been in the company for a very long time, but there is a very strong personal connection between the people, and the way I can describe it is exactly with your words. It's like a big family, which doesn't mean that it's relaxed, everything is fine, it's okay. Still, you have to perform, you have to do the right job, like in any family. So it's not that you have a carte blanche to do whatever you want. There are a lot of things that you have to do right, but the family element is very, very important. That's why we also encourage anybody to go and visit the factory to understand this sense of belonging, especially with our clients, because you don't simply purchase a motorcycle, you purchase a Ducati which has kind of a baggage to come with, but it's a good one. Yeah,
there's a real passion. You can feel the passion, and the kind of desire to do things well and do things better. I remember we had a simple example. We about 15 years ago, I was invited to interview Domenicali, and I'm very excited and thought we got it. Anyway, it turned out when we got there, it turned out that we weren't interviewing him. He wanted to interview us, and he took the opportunity to ask a couple of UK journalists about the UK market, and this was ahead of the Multistrada, and he was looking. I think he was head of product development at that time, but so he was using us for market research, and it was a fascinating conversation because he clearly knew more about bikes than us, and it left a real impression.
It's the same, yes, same for us.
I was going to say that, and what resonates certainly for me when it comes to that familyness of it and the inclusivity of it, and how passionate the whole team are about it, is that when we attend press launches, I remember two standout examples of when Claudio Domenicali is there, not just to come and say hello, I'm the boss, and go and enjoy the bike, but to get involved. He has the dinner with us, and he goes out on the bikes with us, and he really shares those experiences, and he wants to know what we genuinely think, as opposed to just waiting to read the reviews. So I think there was one example. We did the Multistrada V4 rally in Sardinia, perhaps, and there was some people who didn't know who he was. So he just this Italian guy came to talk about the bike and introduce himself. I think one of the journalists said, "What do you do for Ducati?" And he joked. He said, "Well, I make the sandwiches." So he was just it's a good example of having him there, and for us, it makes us feel good that the boss is there as well.
I remember the case because we've been reported that one of the British journalists came up with a question, and we said, "Oh no," but it was very genuine. Actually, it was really funny.
I'm sure he thought he took it in good stead. Fabrizio, can we talk a little bit more about how Ducati has grown, specifically Ducati UK, and the areas that you look after in your time? What is it that your best achievements in the last few years?
When we talk about growth, success, and it's not necessarily in volume of sales. In the motorcycle industry, Ducati is not a volume manufacturer. we are a niche manufacturer, premium, and we don't look at expanding the market in terms of volume, but expanding the market in terms of experience we are providing. So I think we are refining continuously the proposition we give to our clients, with while ensuring that you will ride the best concentration of technology that you can get on a motorcycle. But at the same time, you are riding a brand, which now we celebrate with 100 years anniversary, that distinguish you from many other motorcycle manufacturers. So that is, in a way, reconnecting to what you were saying about the family sense, the fact that our CEO is approachable and in contact with our clients. We organize trips to the factory with welcoming from the CEO. We organize special, let's say, experiences on a very exclusive location, with the display of even models to come to a selection of our top clients. So this is extremely important for us. And our job over here is to promote this kind of family, extended family. And we do it through many things. Our dealer network is extremely important. Of course, the product is important, but let's say the product is a given. Our dealer network is basically the front line, is the appearance of our brand. Not only needs to be at the level of the product we have, but also I always make the example: if you are a good salesperson, you expect to be dressed in a certain way, but also you have to be a good person yourself, because the appearance itself is not enough. So we spend a lot of energy in training for a dealer network, in basically general improvement at every level. And the same things I mentioned before, providing events over here and back in Italy as well, as that sense of belonging. We have an element, it's called NPS, an indicator. It's called Net Promoting Score. It's used by many companies, but in the motorcycle industry we have the highest NPS, because we want our clients to be proud of being a Ducati rider.
And how does... So, well, let me just talk about the centenary year as well. So 100 years of Ducati, which is extraordinary. How are you celebrating as a company?
Oh, there's a lot of stuff. So here in the UK, we are starting with a dedicated track day that will be in two dates in May, 5th and 7th of May, and then that will be a celebration of the centenary over here. I have to remember the pronunciation, centenary over here. Then the pinnacle in terms of event would be the World Ducati Week, which we do every 2 years. That will be on the 4th of July, which coincides with the incorporation of Ducati back in 100 years ago. And products, of course, there's something that will come as well that is related somehow to the centenary.
How do you say that in Italian? Anniversario? Or...
Centenario.
Oh, I won't even try to repeat
that. And you
that.
will keep this word in your records, because there might be something coming up with some names related to centenario.
I'll have to learn how to say it.
Yes, like we all have to learn multistrada.
Multistrada. And say it in that particular way. It's so romantic, isn't it? Fabrizio, just for those who have aspirations of becoming the head of Ducati UK in when your time is done, what sort of advice would you give? What do you think is the best parts of your job?
One is, think very carefully. Is it really what you want to do in your life? Joking apart, it's. I think the most important thing is, please understand what a brand means, what being a brand means. You have, by one side, the opportunity to, how can I say, exploit that brand, because it gives you, opens the door to many, many things. But at the same time, on the other side, could be dangerous, because you have to be careful not to do things that someone that doesn't have a brand is easily able to do. So protect the brand. But it it's very difficult to explain. I think probably because we've been in the company for a long, long time, we grow up with the concept of brand. It's like protect your family name. It's something similar to that. So understand that, and you will have quite a rewarding job.
You're certainly not stuck for different types of models to promote, to talk about, to protect. And they've all got their own character, their own distinguishability. I think I counted 17 new models that have been announced, new or updated models that have been that have been promoted by Ducati or announced by Ducati over the last 14 months or so. Is there any particular reason why there is so many? Is it engine platform related? Is it emissions related? Is it just because of the evolution of the bikes? Or
I think it's evolution. Ducati leaves of the next step, how to be always at the forefront of technology, innovation, and you see MotoGP, for example. That's an example, is where it comes from. But that's a culture, that's an attitude. So our job is to provide this experience, this product, where there is a market opportunity. So where there is a market opportunity, there is obviously the reason why to introduce these models. But I think, given the size of the company, it's is a huge effort. The kind of energy, resources that are involved in R&D, in developing this new product, is extremely big, given the size of the company. So it's very, very important to understand that we put everything into it.
It's a really interesting, because I think when you look at Ducati through the last 40 or 50 years, going from a company that was known for making small single-cylinder bikes to twin-cylinder bikes to the four-cylinder bike, it's that feeling of never standing still and not relying on tradition and not relying on history, but always being aware of it. It's that seems to be the unifying element of it, that everything has to be new. We do this because it's right, because it's the right thing to do now, and we're aware of our history, but we're not governed by it. We're not ruled by it.
I think it's part of the racing mind attitude that Ducati has. You push the limit in every direction. Then you get to a point in which, unfortunately, you cannot push any further. That's, for example, the moving from a high-performance engine from a twin-cylinder to a V4. So it's a kind of a mixture between tradition in one way, because it's still a V configuration engine. It's not a boxer. It's not inline, and innovation and looking forward. So you get to a point in which you cannot do more with what you have been doing. So you have the courage to go out of your comfort zone and do something different. Yeah. But you can rest assured it's always in search of the best thing you can provide, or the best thing you can do. Because if you don't do the best, you don't win. And if you don't win, why do you do that?
Yeah, yeah. But also alongside that, the culture thing again is interesting, because if you look at MotoGP, Ducati had really strong bikes in MotoGP for a long time, but it took being bold enough to reorganize the team and the people within the team and the management of the team was the thing that in the end transformed it from being a potential to success.
You mentioned before the people, the sense of family and so on. it is another thing that our CEO mentioned quite often. We have regular meeting on a quarterly basis with all the management and so on. And he says, yes, we have a great success in the racing. We have good products. This grows, but the people are the ones that are making this happen. So this is a very, very crucial, important point, and that's why probably comes we have this sense of family, of belonging, and so on. So. Yeah, sometimes it's kind of like a chemical reaction. You can have the best bike, you can have the best showroom, but then you have to have the best people. Then you put them together, and then you have the chemical reaction. If all the elements are correct, you have a successful thing. Sometimes it doesn't happen. I mean, no one is perfect. You change, and then you try again. Sometimes you fail, and then you try again.
It's really interesting.
From a racing perspective, then you've had great success over the recent years in all levels, virtually. Certainly with British Superbikes, World Superbikes, MotoGP. And there's the expression, isn't there? We've had for years and years and years. Win on a Sunday, people will buy on a Monday. Do you still see that? Is that still real?
Well, depends the Monday of which week it is. It's not necessarily the Monday or the following week. Now. The purchasing process is more complex. Motorcycles are more complex. I think if there is something we have to take from the racing world is the attitude, that approach. Whatever Ducati experiment on the racetrack will come on the road bikes. And you can see it in every single model of our product range. So it all trickles down from the technology that has been developed and as an experiment in the racing world, where you push, as I said before, you push everything to the limit.
We see a lot with the as you say, the technology that appears on the MotoGP bikes or even on the World Superbikes, be it aerodynamics or electronics. But the process of developing a bike must take 5, 6, 7 years sometimes. The guys in Bologna must know what they're working on for the 2030 already.
Yes, it's exactly like that. It's a long process, 3 years, but also depends what kind of innovation you're talking about what kind of technology. Something can be introduced relatively in a short window of time, something else maybe a little bit later. So it's not that it's a complete block and then you do this and then another block you do something else. There is something that is introduced gradually in the product development. But I think that there is so much coming from electronic development, the geometry of the motorcycle, little things that sometimes people don't think about, but this is the typical explanation is, for example, when you're racing and you have 20 laps to go, 25 laps to go, of course, towards the end, you get tired. And when you get tired, you perform a little bit worse. And so why not finding a way to get less tired? Oh, wow, what a surprise. This is a great discovery. But if you make the bike, which is the ergonomics allows you to perform at the limit, but with less physical stress, you have a bigger chance to be still performant towards the end. And the example is the Panigale, the latest Panigale V4. When, of course, a lot has been made in order to make the bike extremely performant on a circuit, but a lot has been made also to make the bike extremely friendly when you're riding on the road. And the big surprise that everybody tested the bike, the journalists at the beginning, was not so much how good it was on the track, which was expected, and how easy it was on the road. So this kind of things comes from a combination of elements and a lot of electronics.
You've got to, these days, I believe, and we talked a little bit about it off camera earlier on, about the level of adjustability within today's motorcycle. And we'll take the Panigale V4 as a prime example there, with the electronics, the settings that you can discover, play with, test, try. As you know, you're learning about your riding style as well as trying to match it up with what the bike can do. And it's almost like today you're going to get an instruction book that's really hefty. So from a dealer, I guess my question is, from a dealer network, the guys who are face to face with your customers, they've got to really understand what it is that these bikes can do.
It's crucial. It's fundamental. As I said before, we invest a lot of resources into training our network. Of course, on let's say at the desk, but also on the bikes. There is a training, physical training back in Italy coming in April, where all our network will have to participate, and so that is a must, something that we have to do. But part of the this technology coming to the motorcycles is also something that it works on its own. So there is a new frontier that is on Ducati motorcycles that come from the racing, and then was first introduced on the Panigale and now is on the Multistrada as well, is the DVO, for example, Ducati Vehicle Observer, which monitors on its own, you don't have to do anything, what you are doing with the motorcycle, and then it learns and it prepares the bike for when you are going to do it again. But it doesn't do it, it does it with a fraction of time, which are less than seconds, less than milliseconds. It's incredibly fast. Of course, it comes from the racing. If you are on a track, you repeat the circuit several times. So when you get to a certain point, you probably will do exactly what you did 1.5 minutes before. So, but the bikes then learn that you are going to put the brakes on, you're going to lean, and then prepares the suspension, throttle, and so on in order to do it better than the time before. So why not do it on the road as well? So if you are riding on a highway 70 miles per hour straight, and you've been doing it for a while, that probably your suspension needs to be a little bit softer. You don't need to have throttle reactive because you're not doing it. So the bikes change its parameters on its own in order to do this kind of job. But when you get out of the motorway and you start a road or B road and you start turning, so of course the bikes understand, not of course, the bikes understand that something has changed. You are using your throttle much more, your suspension has much more been used. So toughen the suspension, make the throttle a little bit more reactive, and so on. There are 70 parameters that are controlled instantly in every moment you're using the bike. You hit a bump with the front wheel, it prepares the rear wheel for the same bump, because quite probably you're going to hit it with the rear, you would hope so, as well. So these kind of things, it's built in the bike. The training is also part of saying, did you tell that there is this thing? Because technically you don't need to say it, but you go on this bike and say, wow, it works so well. Lucky. No, it's not lucky, it's because it's been made.
You almost want the screen at the end of the ride when you pull in the garage. The screen says, "Well done, you scored 8 out of 10."
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And like you say, we as riders we don't realise it, and some of us will be really interested, and some of us won't care. But it's fascinating that the level of technology now allows the bike to do that, and we don't notice it. Because I remember certainly some of the early generations of electronic suspension 20 years ago. Were very noticeable, and you ride them and you could feel what it was doing, and it wasn't quite as good at that time as conventional suspension, but we had to have that to be able to get to this, and now we're at a point where it works really well.
I know you're going to say no, I can't talk about it, but I'm going to ask it regardless. Over the next 5 years, how is Ducati going to evolve the brand? I appreciate that you can't talk about specific models, but in terms of this technology, you've given us a fantastic example of a bike's brain. Are we? So I guess from what we see in world motorsport right now, is that the kind of, are we expecting to see those type of aerodynamics or that kind of ride height device? We can always see it on a Multistrada now, where we see it on a Panigale, but how is the brand going to develop as well as that technology? Can you enlighten us a little? As
you said, we cannot talk about products clearly, but what you you can be sure of is that the new technology that comes up on the racing world, or even in the R&D department, not necessarily only on the racing world, will come on the motorcycle. It's a matter of, first, is it appreciated? Is it cost effective? Is, if you, for example, the squatter, I don't know if you say like that in English, but is it needed? When are you going to use it? Would be great to have it, but if it costs £30,000 more on a bike, maybe not. But if we look at what we have right now, so far, you can see right now, the DVO is the example that I mentioned, but even aerodynamically, the Panigale V4R, the side pods, it's the first time that come on a standard bike, on a road bike, not standard, on a road bike, you can have a side pods. Those aerodynamic, the winglets now are kind of common, but go back 5 years, 6 years ago was kind of something, oh wow, what is that? So these kind of things will always move down into the production motorcycles. And we are I wouldn't say at a crossroad technologically. I would say we are in a massive spaghetti junction, because there are so many things going on. Engine configurations, hybrid, battery electric, internal combustion, synthetic fuels, and so on and so forth. There are so many things out there. We need to scan what the technology is providing us. We need to capitalize from the experience in racing. From 2027, for example, in MotoGP, regulation will change dramatically, displacement and so weight and so on and so forth. Then, to me, is a great opportunity. We can see a lot of things coming from there, learn, and again, develop in the products, yes.
And I suppose that moves on to, or naturally moves on to, the world of EV. And we've seen Ducati's involvement in Moto E. I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong here, you served 3 years of your 4-year contract, and then the FIM said, no, we're going to go on a hiatus. And yet, only I think a short while after that announcement came, you, in Munich, if I was right, presented a solid state version of the V21L prototype.
I think it would be quite unwise not to say, it would be unwise to abandon completely any battery electric motorcycle development for the future. We need to look what is going on and continue developing the technology. But we have to also be realistic. I don't think there are many currently on the market full electric motorcycle that are a success commercially. I'm talking about. Why? It's not because of that specific brand or the specific model. The energy density is not yet where it should be for a motorcycle. It's there for cars. It's getting there for cars. But in the balance between performance and weight and range on a motorcycle, we have to be honest, it's not there yet. That's why new battery technology, what we are looking at the moment is where are the batteries going, and that is the direction that we are close monitoring to understand what is going to happen next. So electric is still very much into the future of Ducati, but we have to be realistic and understand when is the right time to go commercial on that.
You must have learned a lot from the days with Moto E.
Oh yes, oh yes. That again, I don't think there is anywhere else in the automotive industry that teach you more than racing. It's incredible. But it's also true that in the Moto E, I was impressed when I saw that there is all the bikes are stored together in a certain area. There is a 24/7 fire engine team there with the guy with the uniform, with the protected uniform, ready to intervene. So you cannot think to do that in your garage when you bring back your bike. So there is still a lot of things to put back in place properly in order to go that direction. So
yeah, and the bike market is so different from the car market, because cars are utility. Cars do many short journeys, and not that many long journeys on the whole. And bikes are.
But also, I mean, if you let the cars electric alone, without national state incentives and so on, probably you would be in a similar situation. And for the motorcycle, there is another element. If you are on the highway and you stop for a coffee with your car, you put the car park in there. But on motorcycle, you don't want to go on the highway. You want to go on the coastal road, and there are maybe not that many charging points. So it's also what do people want right now? So you can be idealistic and think, oh yes, we're gonna make an electric range of bikes, and then you don't sell it. Oops, that's gonna be a problem.
We've talked a lot about that family feel and how Ducati operates, but you're also owned by the Audi Group, a huge organization. Does that have any influence? Do you feel that when you're working?
Not so much when you're working on a day-by-day basis, but yes, of course there is an influence. As you said, it's a big group, it's a big company. There are procedures to follow, and a system, methods, and so on and so forth. But I have to say, you don't see it on a day-by-day activity, probably because we have incorporated these kind of procedures. Compliance is very, very strong, and so on and so forth. But there is also some technology that you can learn, you can share with the headquarters. So we are between ourselves and Lamborghini, which is just next door to us. There are a lot of collaboration at that level, and what you can get from the car world is very welcome, and it works quite well. But as a company itself, we have quite a high degree of independency.
It's interesting you mentioned Lamborghini, because I think you've just launched a new thing for the Multistradas, where you can now have very, very bespoke bikes built. That's
a probably one of the another thing that is specific of our brand. We have a new program which is called Ducati Factory Made, where started with the Multistrada, you can decide to customize your bike with a set of colors, a set of features on the bike, like the calipers, the wheels, the seat height, directly made in the factory. You don't have to customize it after production. This, as I said, includes colors that are not in the standard colors. We have just launched it. So as a client, you go on with the dealer or on your configurator. You start choosing some option of the bikes. It's guided, and then you have a unique configuration of bike that is different to the one that you can the standard one or someone else has been configuring. So this is quite exceptional, and it comes directly from the factory, so it's certified and so on and so forth. That requires, you can imagine, quite a logistic effort, and back to the training of our dealer network, knowledge in order to guide the clients in the right direction and the right choice. So we are very, very proud of it. As I said, just been launched. Probably we will expand it to other models, but in due time. So it's something we're really, really strong about.
So you can personalize your Multistrada to sort of match your car beard color or your leathers.
Yes, but there are two programs. One is the DFM, Ducati Factory Made, in which you have a list of options that you can add to your bike. But then we have another level of customization, which is called Ducati Unica, which is unique. So then you go at the factory and you customize any bike of the product range as you want, from the color to some components, carbon, not carbon, and so on and so forth. This is a very, very exclusive program. We produce something like between 15 and 20 bikes a year, and we have our order bank covering the next 3 years already. So, but that is something that you do. It's what luxury car manufacturers do on a regular base. So we also offer this. Of course, it's not for everyone, but we give this opportunity as well. So again, customizing according to your taste, or at a more simple level, having a production bike, but a little bit more your own one, the way you like. So you can decide what level you want to go, and then you can decide which program to choose from.
It's interesting because we often talk about, when we're kind of sitting in the BikeSocial office, we talk about how the market and what's happening in motorcycling and the kind of the demographics and the kind of things you would expect. And we talk a lot about young riders, and we talk about where the next generation of young riders is coming, and how manufacturers are going to cope with that. But actually, it occurs to me as we're talking that if you're in that premium luxury end of the market, that's probably less of a concern to you guys, because you're dealing with your target customer is probably quite different. Are you worried? Do you still have programs that you're thinking of for new riders, young riders?
I wouldn't say we are worried, but we are aware. It's not only in the UK. UK has quite a high average age of riders. Surprisingly, is higher than Japan, which I thought it was already high over there, but it's quite high. We are aware of it. What can we do about it? We work on the aspirational aspect. Imagine if you are in the racing, you are winning, you have the Marc Marquez of the situation, or the BSB, and so on and so forth, and you have young kids that think, I want to have that bike one day. You are working on the aspirational side. Then, are we producing entry-level motorcycles, low displacement? No, we are not. We are not made for that. All our production is in Italy. We have a factory also in Thailand, but we produce exactly the same model over there. If we want to change and start producing and selling small displacement motorcycle, we would have to change the strategy, the structure, the logic of our company, which we are not going to do.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Where would you say? So how many? Every year I see press releases from Ducati that said, yes, an exceptional year for sales, highest ever, which is great for you guys. But what are your best-selling models in the UK, and how many bikes do you sell globally?
The best-selling model in the UK is the Multistrada, the entire family. In the UK, we are in the region close to 3,000 units, of far from being dominating the market, not at all. We are, as I said again, we are a niche manufacturers. Worldwide, we are in the region of 55,000 bikes. So we are not, again, also at world level, a volume manufacturer. So these are, and we want to stay there. We want to be a manufacturer of this level. We don't want to conquer market share at every cost in every segment and so on. But going back to your point, yes, we know that there is we need young blood to come into the market, and one of the reasons, for example, we entered into the off-road motocross world is also because, in general, the average age of that business is younger. Yeah. Is younger. So, and also it was probably the only place in which we were not competing. So there was a bit of a interest in racing over there as well.
Yeah, very interesting.
I think arguably one of the biggest hurdles in motorcycling is riding standards, and there have been discussions. We have our own better riding series as well, and of course we're sitting here next to your Panigale V2, which is liveried up with BikeSafe. Is this just one of the sort of promotions that you do for trying to overcome that or trying to help improve riders?
We do it with the product itself. If you look back in time, Ducati has been one of the pioneers introducing technology that was towards the safety on the road. So ABS has been from the very beginning on our bikes. Cornering ABS, again, I remember talking to one of the test riders, and they told him, look, now when you are leaning and in your curve, just put the brakes on. I said, no, I don't want to do it. Instinctively, you cannot do it. And I find myself, I learned riding many years ago. You don't brake on a curve. You don't do it because you know it's dangerous. So these features have been introduced and on, one after the other. Adaptive cruise control, the first on a bike was a Ducati. Now there is the early warning alert, early impact warning. So it comes like in a car. It comes up when it says you're going to impact. And there is more technology that is going to come. Again, thanks to the collaboration with the car industry, is already a normal conversation in the car industry, just vehicle communicating between them. So if you come to a T-junction, a blind T-junction, and if you could have something in your vehicle that says, look, there is another one coming on the other direction, and careful, is a motorcycle, and the other way around, that would be amazing. So, but this technology is expensive. And again, we have to be rational. You cannot put everything in every single motorcycle, so because otherwise people would not buy it. So we have to be rational and understand where it makes sense, where it will be used, and then focus on that.
I guess the same question or a similar question would be around this sort of automated gear changing that we're seeing on Honda, BMW, KTM, Yamaha. They all have their own systems. We've not yet seen it on a Ducati yet. Is that likely? Again, I appreciate that sometimes you can't say, oh, yes, definitely, it's coming in 2 years' time. But is this something that's part of the technology? I appreciate that Ducatis, generally speaking, are very technologically advanced motorcycles already.
Yeah, that is something we are looking into. It would be, again, not wise not to check the technology. Again, we are talking about high-performance engines, and also the client base that would appreciate that kind of technology. So we have been asking, even personally, I've been asking around some of our top clients and loyal clients and say, would you appreciate that? And he said, look at me like, in disgust. On a Panigale? No way. So, yes, it's interesting. It has a future. It, again, gradually, there will be a moment in which it would make sense. At the moment, we are considering, and we are looking if it is the right choice to do in this specific moment. Maybe it is, but this is my personal opinion. Maybe in some not high performance vehicles could be a good solution, something to offer. But something we are looking at.
I think it's really interesting how Ducati do approach technology. I remember linked brakes is a good example. You know, the companies have been making linked brake systems for a long time, and the initial ones were always very much around safety and based on the fact that, you know, statistics show people weren't using the front brake, for example. And I love the fact that when Ducati introduced the linked brake system, it was very much still about performance. It was about here's how to make your bike more stable and more confident and more capable as you're going around a corner and using the brakes, and the effect is the same. It makes you more likely to stay on the motorcycle and enjoy it. But I love the way that you present it, and I love it. It's as a positive, rather.
But the trigger is different.
Yeah.
The trigger is not, in that specific case, not to be safe in that specific case was to keep the rear brakes on even when you're coming out of the curve, because it gives you more grip.
Yeah.
You see, it's a very, very different approach. And then he said, yeah, but it's also safe. Oh, yeah, you're right. It's also safe. Yeah, let's put it on the bike. It's not like that. I'm joking. I'm making an exaggeration. But of course, again, if you have more grip, you are more performant and you are safer.
Yeah.
And the same story on the bikes. You have sometimes an experienced rider that actually are scared about using the front brake, or they use only the front brake, especially on sport bikes. How many riders, they go on track days and they say, I never use the rear brake. And they think you're more macho. No, you're not. You have to use both brakes. That's why they're there. Yeah. But anyway, yes, there's a lot to talk about it.
There is, but again, I think one of the fascinating things about what's been happening in MotoGP recently is that a lot of the technology we see now allows people to get more grip from the rear tyre and get the balance between front and rear better. And that's something 10, 15 years ago we never would have even thought about. And now we've got bikes in racing, at least, that technologically allow that to happen. And for them, that's because they want to go faster. But for us on the road, that makes it safer and more enjoyable.
But I think is the willing and the effort to transfer the benefits you get in the racing world to the production bike and the road bikes is something, to me, extremely important. Because, as you said, there is to be faster on the lap. On the bikes is to be safe. Yeah. Is to be less tired. Is to enjoy the motorcycle more. That's a noble purpose of racing. I would say, the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Just looking back at the sort of the history over the last 25, 30 years of Ducati, I think the reputation has developed a lot for the better for your brand and the protection of that brand you were talking about earlier on. Is there a standout, I don't know, marketing campaign or particular model or family of models that has really helped that development, or you can pinpoint the acceleration in that sort of that quality of brand? I don't know if I've phrased that correctly, but
I think there has been a switch, a cultural switch, in which it's not right to accept that, it's a Ducati, it will break down. And it's not pleasant to hear, but you have to do something about it. And what has changed is that incredible focus on quality, on the reliability in every single component of the bike. That is starting, is giving the results. Now you can see our bikes are extremely reliable. The quality is at the front of everything. Is a kind of another championship. There's the championship of the brand, the championship of the sales, and then the championships of the quality. The safety, another championship is important, and then the championship of quality. Now Ducati is recognized for the fit and finishing. The quality then, of course, is another attitude that comes to every level. I would say that Ducati applies an additional level of quality, which is the visual quality. To me, quality is also, does it look good? Because there are many bikes out there that are, quality fine, but they're not really so good looking to look at. For us, it's part of the quality. It needs to be good looking, otherwise people don't buy it, and you're not proud to ride it. So there's another very, very important point. So it's a cultural change in the company. And wherever we are now, I can tell you it's not enough. We have to do better. So next bike is going to be better and better and better.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, again, I think as someone who's had experience of a lot of Ducatis as a journalist over the last 30 years, you see that change. You really see that change in quality and the perception of customers about that as well, and just how Ducati are received in the market. And I don't know whether, to me, that I always associated that with the Audi takeover. I don't know if that's coincidence, but it felt like before that there were several different regimes at Ducati where it got better and then it slipped back and got better and slipped back. But it's been very consistent for the last 10 years.
As I said, I'm really convinced there's a cultural change, and the cultural change is normally influenced by many things. The leadership, definitely. If I have to say, there is one thing that has been crucial, has been the leadership. Claudio Domenicali has got no compromises on quality. But again, we are part of a large motorcycle group, which also is known for its quality. So of course, that kind of culture is influenced by many elements. But yeah, as a fact for us now, quality is crucial. I have many memories about it, but yes.
Yeah.
Fabrizio, from a brand perspective, from a manufacturer perspective, where are the biggest threats? I was going to specify asking about Chinese manufacturers and their popularity, influx, appearance, certainly on British shores. I know that certainly in the Far East, and you have a great experience of this, that over in Asia there's been plenty of them. But we've seen less and less. We've seen more and more of them coming into the UK over the last 2-3 years. Does Ducati worry about that, or is it because you're operating a slightly different manner or market that it's less of an issue?
It's not a worry. It's awareness. There is awareness that there are new kids in the block, they say. So I don't think that is... I think there are bigger things than that. I think specifically for the UK, but not only, there is something we as motorcycle community, manufacturers, everybody involved, we have to do about the barriers to motorcycles. And the barriers to motorcycles, unfortunately, are many, but we don't have to face everything at the first job, because otherwise people get, overwhelmed. But there are, one by one, we could put effort in order to sort it out. The cost of ownership of the motorcycles, driven by, I don't know if I should say it, but insurance cost is incredible. It's growing. It's going up and up. It's would be, not right to ignore it. That is becoming a barrier. People cannot buy a motorcycle because either the cost of the insurance is extremely high, or they cannot even insure their own bike. Some bikes cost more than a luxury car to insure. Driving license, fortunately, there is a potentially a change that is coming on the driving license regulation that would, everybody's quite excited about it. Let's. I think there is going to be some positive outcome from there. Condition of the roads a little bit, that's an issue. Sometimes we think, why do we see less sport bikes on the road? Well, have you seen the potholes that are there? So that's why there is if you are riding by night or is wet and you enter into a pothole because you don't see it, you have a problem. I remember clearly, that says a lot. I told my boss in Italy, there was a test of the Desert X Rally, and among other quality of the bike, it was mentioned it works very well with the potholes. So that cannot be a reason to buy that bike, because if you hit a pothole, you are safe. It's not right. So I see there are some constraints around that are called barriers that are making being a motorcyclist a little bit more difficult. And I can see why younger generations, they need to go through a lot of, they really need to be extremely motivated. Extremely. So my son is one of those. Gosh, you say, I respect you because you don't give up. You keep on going, you wait for the time in order to change the license and so on and so forth. We have to give them credit. Then, you mentioned Chinese manufacturers. Welcome. If we are not producing motorcycles, small displacement, lower price and so on, at least someone else is doing it. So why not? Then, if you like riding and you want another kind of bike, you want to go up the ladder, here we are, waiting for you. So I think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
More bike we sell, all of us, in the country, everywhere, the better.
Fabrizio, the new V2 platform that you have, which we've seen on Street Fighter, Panigale, and so on, that, if I'm right in thinking, is A2 license compliant. Is that a sort of almost like a deliberate choice to get younger people into the brand? And therefore perhaps there's around PCP deals, there's options there.
Yes, it is that we want it. We understand. Yes, it's, as I said before, we are not producing small displacement bikes, but this doesn't mean we don't want people to come into the Ducati world. And we understand there is an issue of affordability or perception of affordability. And as I said, I have no doubts on the quality of our product, the performance of our product, but it's not only that the people are looking at. People need to be able to afford a motorcycle, and specifically one of our bikes. And I'm convinced, I know by fact, that a lot of people out there think that a Ducati is much more expensive than it is in reality. Two things, two elements. One, first of all, we were talking about quality before, right? So, on the quality side, the interval for the valve clearance, valve check for the Panigale, for the Multistrada V4 is 45,000 miles. Is the longest available. 60,000 kilometers is 45,000 miles. So, this is one. The Multistrada comes with standard 4 years warranty. And then on top of that, we've got the extended warranty program. So we are really safe, and we are really, sure about the quality of our bikes. But then, go back to affordability. The new Monster is available with a PCP of £115 a month. It's nothing much more of any other motorcycle, even smaller. Point is, we are fortunate enough that Ducati maintains quite a high residual value. And we have programs as well. If you're not happy with the monthly payment, we have programs like the 50 to 50. You pay 50% of the bikes, 0 installment for 2 years, and then at the end you decide if you want to pay the 50% remaining or giving the bike back. It's zero. You paid 0 for 2 years. It's quite a good monthly installment. Then you say, yeah, but you have to pay 50% at the purchase moment. Yeah, you might have a trade-in bike. That is, of course, accounted in your deposit for the bike. So we've got plenty of these financial program. And again, it might sound that we don't want, people coming into the Ducati world unless they spend a lot of money. Not at all. It's the opposite.
Yeah, so I guess the key from that is trying to get people into dealerships to be able to explain all that to them, show them the bikes, get them excited, give them the options.
Yeah, I think we are not talking about a microwave in which you look online, you order, and gets delivered to home the day after. I think even compared to the car world, people want the interaction with the dealer. People want to touch and feel. People want to have a conversation. And because the complexity of the product, not only technical complexity, but financial complexity and so on, is becoming more important, it's very, very, it's crucial that to talk to someone that is an expert about it.
Fascinating chat, Fabrizio. Thank you so much for coming in. I don't think I've got anything else to cover, Steve.
No, I really enjoyed it. It's been really good. Thank you.
So did I. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time. Thank you for your patience. Any questions that perhaps we could pass on to Fabrizio, feel free to put them in the comments section below. But until next time, we'll see you then.